Curious onlooker. There have been many high-profile exposés of Scientology, recently including the Emmy-winning HBO documentary Going Clear. Similar accounts have come up time and again through the history of Scientology. How are public relations flaps, TV or newspaper series, public protests, unflattering news stories, etc., experienced by you when they occurred? Are staffers informed about such things or shielded from them? Did they alter your work assignments in any way? This is a great question. Basically, when there was any sort of what we called N theta in the news or in the news media, and in Scientology, almost all news media is sort of painted with this brush of N theta. In other words, it's bad news. It's stuff that's just going to make you upset or antagonize you, and it's a bunch of lies and stuff that's purposefully painted to give a distorted view of things. That's one way of looking at N theta. And so Scientologists label all of this stuff as N theta, and so they don't want to look at it. They go, oh, N theta, I don't want to look at that. So if there's any sort of N theta presented in the media, if there's any hint of anti-Scientology or negative criticism of Scientology in the media, Scientologists are indoctrinated to automatically put the shields up and not want to look at it. It's an amazingly brilliant form of mind control because it's them policing themselves. And they are indoctrinated in such a way that they are convinced that it will be harmful to them and disrupt their ability to do Scientology by being exposed to any criticism of Scientology. It is the stupidest, most mind-numbing idea to think that looking at criticism of something is somehow going to be detrimental to your mental health. It is almost teeth-gnashingly stupid. And I bought into it for years, so I know what I'm talking about when I say I was an idiot for following that. And now that I'm not following it and I can see how it works and how it's done, I have to say it's just flat out stupid. And it's a purposefully indoctrinated stupidity in people who otherwise aren't stupid people, which is why it's so amazing. But that happens in all destructive cults, not just Scientology. Not by any stretch is it just Scientology. So it's a whole pattern operation that occurs with people in destructive cults, and it's one of the signal indicators that you are dealing with a destructive cult is getting people into the mindset that they are not allowed to, or that it's destructive to look at any criticism of your group. You should be free at any time, anywhere, 24/7, 365 days a year to look at any information you want of any kind having to do with anything. And if you think otherwise, I think you might want to review your ability to think and look at where that idea comes from, that it might be damaging to you to look at something critical or negative, because there's nothing wrong with doing that. As far as staffers being informed of it, there are warnings given to staff if it's thought that they might be exposed to information, like all the way back in 1991 when the Time magazine article came out about Scientology being the cult of greed. Everybody was told, don't read that, right? It's just N theta. And when Nightline aired an interview with David Miscavige, also I think back in 91 or back in that time period, there was a 10 or 15 minute intro that ABC News made to that interview that detailed the OT3 data and made fun of various Scientology practices. And so a lot of Scientologists were actually told not to watch videos of that. Or the church provided an edited version that didn't have all that in it. And that's what we were watching. And that's how I watched that interview to begin with, was I watched the authorized version of it. And you just get, like I said, you just kind of get used to that, where it just becomes a habit or a pattern. So how did that disrupt our work? When protesters would come around, like Anonymous in the late 2000s, they just shut down the church. I mean, they just close off all the doors, all the windows, they cover up the blinds, and we're not allowed to look at them, see them, you know, and within the bubble world, our reaction to that was always sort of an eye roll and a, Jesus, what do these guys, you know, think they're doing? Because we were just kind of fed up with the protests, kind of like what we didn't understand in the bubble world why the protests were occurring, because we didn't know what our own church was actually doing to people. You know, unless you're at the highest levels, or unless you're at a place where you're the one who's committing those kind of gross human trafficking and human rights violations against people, you don't necessarily know that these things are going on. Or you have it painted in such a way that it's not what it looks like it is. It's actually something else, right? So the world view from inside the bubble world is a very different view than when you get out of the bubble world. So we were always annoyed and felt sort of harassed and sort of put upon that these protesters would come around, and it was sort of a, why can't these guys just go do something constructive with their lives? Why do they have to come after us? We're just trying to help people. And for, you know, a lot of Scientologists, that's their attitude. That's what they think, is we're just trying to help people. Why are these people so anti, you know, Scientology? Why are they so down on our religion and stuff? And it's just because they don't look and they don't know what their organization's actually doing. So that's kind of the view from inside.